What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleash, the weekly panel discussion show. And let's go ahead and introduce the guest for this week's panel. That would be the man known as Judas, formerly of Sherdog.com when he was there. But now he's the man at BJ Penn. He's also the man at My MMA News. He's Cole Shelton. Cole, what's going on, my man?
Hey, how are ya?
I thought you was gonna have a little more sauce on that intro. You just hey, and then that was it.
No, we'll keep it nice for you. For now, we'll see.
I'm sure that's
going
gonna
to plenty of
change
fire
soon,
tonight, so don't worry. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna have enough antagonistic attitudes thrown around here, I'm sure. So of course we have the senior editor of Sherdog.com, Mr. Ben Duffy, the jack of all trades who's mastered them all. Ben, how are you doing?
I've been better, man. I mean, obviously, we're all in this struggle together. Even if certain MMA promoters believe that they're above it and separate from it, but a lot of people have it worse than me. Obviously, I'm here safe in my home. Nobody's sick. We have enough food, whatever. But yesterday I woke up and looked over and my clock said 9:10, and I legit did not know whether it was AM or PM. Like, this confinement is starting to get me down. It's starting to get to me. It doesn't help that my wife works nights. And so, I'm sort of half migrated over to her schedule. But dude, this is fucking me up, man. Like, I don't know which end is up. I don't know whether it's day or night. I didn't know what day it was until I was reminded that we had this show. So yeah, I'm struggling, man.
But do you have enough toilet paper? It doesn't even matter about food. Everyone's just buying toilet paper.
I have a bidet, so it doesn't take much toilet paper to dry my holiest of holies once the bidet's done its work. So I'm good there.
And I think a key too is if you can't find that much toilet paper, you have to get food that isn't going to make you need more of it. So just be careful with the diet here. Another thing too that I think is going to be quite the shift once we're out of this whole quarantine situation. Good luck getting me to wear anything but sweatpants and shorts. This is the life as far as fashion is concerned. All right, so of course now the panel is anchored by the man with the math, the statistician, the genius when it comes to numbers. He is also of Sherdog.com, the associate editor there, Mr. Jay Petrie. Jay, how you doing, brother?
Got me all hot and bothered by that intro there. Hanging in there, doing my thing, the usual. Still coming up with the wacky numbers and the interesting things and that we need to talk about. Because if we can't talk about the present and the future, let's talk about the past. So, my stat of the week, I don't have one. I'm just kidding. Of course I have a stat of the week. Come on. The stat of the week is a bummer. So, buckle up, boyos. 2. In the month of April, we still have 2 noteworthy events officially on the schedule. UFC Lincoln and UFC 249. Those are the only 2 major events still left in the month of April ahead.
Yeah, so let's just go ahead and dive right into that one. So we've had a lot of news drop that's very relevant to the sport world, in particular the combat sport world. So the Olympics postponed until 2021, and that was originally slated to start this summer in Tokyo. So that's on ice right now. Fury versus Wilder 3, also on ice. That was to take place, I believe, the week before International Fight Week in Vegas. That is on ice. Top Rank, PBC, pretty much every major promoter has decided to postpone or cancel. We just got word that PFL has postponed their 2020 season. Bellator just canceled their next couple of cards that were scheduled
in May.
Yes. The UFC, on the other hand, is somehow or another still on the schedule. So let's just throw this out there. I mean, we've had Khabib Nurmagomedov against Tony Ferguson, the fight that the MMA gods just don't want to happen, apparently. Now it looks like this is going to be stricken from the record for a 5th time. Now because Khabib is stuck in Russia with all the travel bans. Yet this event is apparently going to persist on. Dana White very adamantly stating this on a podcast earlier today. Why? Gentlemen, why is the UFC the only organization has decided to not postpone their upcoming schedule, gentlemen?
Obstinacy and desperation would be my answer. Desperation because, I mean, we've already covered on this show, and it's kind of been talked about, how dependent Endeavor is on the UFC to provide cash flow to make the interest payments on its debt, which is largely comprised by the price for which they bought the UFC. So that's desperation. Like, the machine has to keep cranking. You know, they can have an event in my living room, and if it's on ESPN and it says UFC on the canvas, they get guaranteed money. They need that money. So that's part
ESPN
of it.
Duffy 2. I like that series.
On the D.
That's a different thing, though.
And then obstinacy. Dana White does not like to be told what he can and cannot do. I mean, his stubbornness it's a long established personality trait. For better or for worse, it is not a uniformly bad thing. Here it kind of is, but I think those are the two reasons. They need the money. They don't like being told what they can and can't do.
All right, Cole. I'll kick it to you with this one. Now the options that are being thrown about now are getting more and more ridiculous as time goes on. So we've heard about Dubai being a possible option. We've heard about Florida being the sole option in the United States. We've heard Justin Gaethje stepping in instead of Khabib. I mean, where do you fall on this? Should UFC 249 be going on? And if so, does it need to be in this iteration, whatever that turns out to be?
It doesn't have to be on it all, and I don't know why they're so. Right when Khabib fell off, it's like, what are you really gonna do? Like, I get people want to see Khabib Tony. Like, I would have bought the pay-per-view. I don't agree with it going on right now, but once Khabib's off, it's like, it's not even that really good of a card, especially because you're probably looking at Jessica Andrade off the card against Namajunas, because if it's in the States, is she even going to allow to be in the States or leave? Like, that's the problem too. You do it in Florida. Half these people are from Russia. Like Islam Makhachev, now he's off. So I'm pretty sure he's back in Russia. I thought he would go back with Khabib, but like, it just makes no sense. And then Dana White, I feel like Dana White's part of reasoning is, oh, look how many viewers we get. We could be the only show in town. We saw what happened at UFC Brasilia. That was the only show in town. That was the worst ESPN ratings. Like, people just aren't really in a mood to watch sports right now. I think people have a lot. There's not much you can do at home, but I don't think Gaethje Ferguson pay-per-view getting people to pay $80 when a lot of people are out of work isn't going to be a logical option.
Yeah, I think definitely a good point there about what's left to fight for now. With Khabib being off this card, the one matchup that everybody who knows anything about mixed martial arts was most anticipating no longer exists. Like that, just take that off the table unless we're going to smuggle Khabib in and out of Russia, like, like some sort of Argo style, like some movie or whatever. This is not a real thing anymore. It no longer exists. So, I mean, Jay, are you interested at all in this kind of slap together version of Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje, wherever it may be? Hashtag UFC yacht in international waters.
I mean, at what point can we officially start, or unofficially, or whatever, start saying that UFC 249 is canceled? If it wasn't beforehand, if it wasn't before the crisis internationally, and, Bob Arum, boxing promoter Bob Arum, who has a reputation he's developed for a long time, he even said, okay, we're going to cut our losses with Top Rank and back off on all this. So it's Dana White versus the world right now. And I mean that quite literally. The world is on lockdown. There are countries you cannot get in and get out of now. Singapore, Russia, most of Europe. It's not a feasible thing anymore. There are 12 fights billed on the 249 card. There are 9 international fighters on those things. So at best we could have, I don't know, Jeremy Stevens, Calvin Kattar, Lyman Good, Bilal Muhammad, and Ben Rothwell, John Vellante. That's it. That's all that's left. That's everything that's left on the card of 249 that doesn't include international fighters of some sort in Brazil or in Moldova or in Morocco or in Canada. It's just not. Why is this still actually a thing? We get it. We, the MMA media, get it. This sucks. This sucks for everybody. not having the fight card that we really want and need, as Dana White has professed to us, that we need to keep going like this, it hurts everybody, obviously. We talked about this many times. Not having the fights hurts the fighters, it hurts the people covering the sports, it hurts the company that would be putting them on, but it hurts all of us together. To try and just jam this down on our throats and say, oh, UFC 249 and Fire Lake, Shawnee, Oklahoma, or Tribal Land, Florida, somewhere with 10 people in the building and a bunch of fights that are just put together on, what, 19 days notice if they started now? Why? Do they really think that we're going to plop down, as Cole said, throw down 70, 80 bucks on a fight card now? Which, by the way, is money that a lot of families don't have because, you know, in the U.S., there's a lot of economic issues going on around the world as well. But, you know, the U.S. pay-per-view market. Why? Just stop, Dana. Just throw the damn towel. We get it. We'll be back. Just stop.
You know, I think it's a good point you guys brought up about the pay-per-view. Like, having the money to shell out for a pay-per-view card, and of course, it'll be a subpar pay-per-view card for a variety of reasons. Even if you had Tony and Khabib on that card, even if you had it in its original iteration as far as the lineup, you know, there are compromised training camps, there's compromised travel situations. I'm sure that anyone who has a family and has any concern about their well-being would be at least slightly mentally distracted going in there to a point where it could show in their performances. So now I just wonder too if this does proceed with Justin Gaethje taking Khabib's spot. However deep the card may be and whatnot, considering the economic situation, considering that this is not going to be the best product that the UFC could put forward, you'd have to imagine they're going to be local fighters that are tapped on the shoulder to fill in spots, depending on which state or country or province or territory that this actually occurs in. You got to wonder, do they drop the price point? Can you see them putting on a, say, a 2 or 3 fight card for 19.99 and saying, hey, this is our way of giving the fans something, some sort of PR spin to make you shell out some money for a fight?
Well, I mean, I was an article I was reading somewhere that the UAE and Saudi Arabia, that region is also being affected by this virus, that there are pilgrimages, holy, religious, 1,000-year-old pilgrimages that are being impacted by this. And Dubai is going to go, oh, we know that we're being, you know, we're dealing with all these things going on here, but UFC, you can come to town and spend some money. No, that's not a viable option either. There isn't a viable option because, as you said, Ant, it would be local fighters. It would be local fighters on 19 days notice as of today if this is still happening. It's it if they wanted to charge $65 for $70 for the pay-per-view, it would be criminal, just you know, judging by what they're going to put together. But I can't see the UFC going, well, we're not going to get as many people, so let's charge lesser. No, they're going to keep it as what they have to maximize the profit, I think.
You know, so another aspect here that has kind of gone underreported, but maybe there just isn't much to report, despite whatever social media activity there has been. There are rumors now that they're trying to make Kamaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal as a potential main event for this. Is there any interest in watching even that fight on whatever sort of timetable, in whatever sort of venue, or however the circumstances line up to potentially move this along forward?
Mm.
I'm interested in the fight. Sure, I'd like to see that at some point.
I'd rather see it with both of them having a full training camp.
Thank you.
Yes.
I don't want to see it in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I'd
Right.
rather see that fight at its best, and certainly that is not the fight that's going to save this card.
Well, there's something that I know, just to refute another point that the MMA media sphere and the community have been talking about Gaethje stepping in to replace us. Gaethje is on record repeatedly for saying, I don't do these short notice fights. I need a full camp to fight. So if you think Justin Gaethje, who is all about a $180 right now, $185 on vacation, is going to step in on 3 weeks' notice to take on Tony Ferguson? No.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just all the dominoes are falling. I'm not sure where else we can go to where someone just sits Dana down and says this is not going to happen. And if it's not Dana, if it's someone pulling Dana strings on this one, sitting Ari Emanuel or whoever is above him, sitting him down and saying, hey, you're just gonna have to take an L on this one. This ain't happening. It's just not happening. I mean, I know I've said this on the show before, but I mean, like BKFC postponed an event, like Dave Feldman postponed an event, and Dana White is not. It's bizarre to say the least. I can't really wrap my mind around this. And I mean, I think another thing too. I know we've touched on this before, but I think the volume on this has been turned up to a level to where we're near just comic lunacy. His antagonistic approach about the coronavirus has to be noted. It has to be noted. In what can only be described as a trip deep to the bottom of the barrel for SureDog.com in search of content, brought me back temporarily to drop some content. The first of which was an op-ed specifically about the hubris of Dana White and how this is not the approach as far as dealing with a global pandemic. I don't know. I mean, is Dana intending to shout down the coronavirus? Is he outbidding it or something? I mean, is the coronavirus going to get bought out and folded into the Zuffa umbrella at some point, gentlemen?
Hold up the tombstone.
Why?
Coronavirus.
Like, why is Dana being so just so unbelievably aggressive toward a non-sentient being, gentlemen?
Well, the worst part is he always says, he's been saying in interviews, oh, all the commissions are liking that we're doing it. Then how come you're going into all these other countries or tribal lands? Like, if all the commissions are good, Nevada State would be licensing this, California State would be licensing this. But no, you're going to tribal lands, or you're going to the Abu Dhabi or Saudi Arabia. They're just going to give you a bunch of money to host the event.
Dude, I mean, I live in a woefully underregulated state, and they couldn't do it here. You can't even get across the border from Louisiana 90 miles away without getting checked. Like they've stopped travel in and out of Texas from Louisiana. So like if Texas isn't going to let you bring in a bunch of people from like Dagestan and Massachusetts and California, like, dude, Texas doesn't want it. Like if Texas doesn't want it, then it probably better off not happening.
Dagestan and Massachusetts.
Like Texas,
Well,
the same state.
I remember Calvin Kattar and Islam Makhayev. I was like, Dagestan and Massachusetts. I couldn't think of the rest of the card.
Well, like look at the UFC actually officially announced, like almost 3 weeks ago now, officially announced that the UFC cards in Columbus and Portland would be moving to the UFC Apex in Nevada. And the commission's like, whoa, no. We're not doing that. We're not doing it. The commission had to shut them down. WrestleMania in Tampa, outside of Tampa, Florida. The commission, the local county commissioner said, if they think they're going to pull off some big event like that, they are mistaken. If Texas don't want it, yeah, that says it.
The same state that sanctioned Kimbo versus Dada 5000, the same state that allowed Antonio Margarito, fresh off of his loaded hand wraps, to box against Manny Pacquiao, the same state that also let Chael Sonnen escape his punishment for the dual violations with California State and Nevada athletic commissions. If Texas isn't allowing it, you've fallen off the rails. Now, the other Texas, Florida, also has its own sort of hangups here. A sheriff around the Tampa area actually issued an arrest warrant for a pastor who decided to proceed with church services, which gathered a couple of hundred people. So they're going after a pastor for having a church service. Do you think mixed martial arts is welcome? I'm sorry. I just can't see that happening. Also, let's keep in mind, this is another story that has gone quite underreported, and I think should be a bigger deal, especially as Dana White, Endeavor, and the UFC are trying to push forward with some sort of piecemeal together version of UFC 249. The International Olympic Committee is currently under fire right now for having a tournament in the UK in the midst of a boxing tournament in the midst of the UK, in the midst of this virus. And now several of the fighters, by the last count I saw, 4, have tested positive for coronavirus. So this is directly affecting combat sports events as well. And Jay, I think it was you who mentioned last week about the Muay Thai event,
Yep.
where like 70 people
70
caught
people or so.
Yeah. So at what point do we realize this is slamming the gas pedal toward a brick wall? All you have to do is slow down.
It truly is strange. I mean, to circle back to your original point about Dana being so hostile about the situation. No, we know Dana. We've known Dana for a lot of years. I mean, one of his most famous things is him shouting at a bunch of underappreciated Ultimate Fighter Season 1 fighters, asking them if they want to be a fighter, and that whole ordeal. So he's made a living by yelling at people and trashing on them and ripping on them. One of his more famous rants that I remember very clearly, because my old roommate and I listened to it and were kind of perplexed by it, when he yelled at Loretta Hunt many moons ago. That's his thing, is to just batter you down. But to Ant's column, you can't. This isn't a battle you can win. You know, this isn't a media member you can silence. You can't take away the coronavirus's press credentials and not let them into this stupid event. I mean, the notion that the UFC or a promotion can pull up a fight card and say, well, we're only going to have 10 people in the building or in this area so we can affect it. No, that's not how fights work. Just picture going into a fight. And the fighter who's training, well, he's training with all these different people, isn't he? He's going to have training partners and coaches. He's going to have management team. He's going to have his family. And then when he gets to the fight, he's going to have the UFC staff, the commissioners, doctors, referees, media members, all within close proximity of this one particular fighter who, by the way, happens to be cutting weight and compromising his or her immune system to fight in a stupid fight. It's not a reasonable thing, and it's not something you can just push through. And my last thought about Dana and his actions is, why does he get so mad when people ask him about testing fighters? Why is he yelling at people when they're asking that question? Because we would know if fighters were tested, and I think I raised this issue last week. We would know because the fighters would talk about it. How do I know? Because a fighter talked about it. Francis Ngannou went on loudly and said, yeah, I've been tested. I'm ready to go. Well, there's 549 other fighters on the roster. What are you going to do? Are you really going to test them all in all their corners? Is that feasible? I don't think so. But it has to be done, right? Right, guys? Am I off the chain here?
No, you're speaking a lot of sense here. I mean, I find it very unusual that that Dana, if there's an actual plan to what's going on, if there's a real legitimate solid game plan that doesn't have a whole lot of major plot holes, and Dana is withholding it from us, I'd be very surprised, because every time there is the slightest bit of good PR to offer up, it gets thrown at our faces quite a bit. You know, so if the UFC is actually testing for coronavirus, do you think they would be telling their fighters to not say anything? Do you think they wouldn't say anything? That would make them the darlings of the sporting world right now. That would turn around all the negative attention, all the bad publicity, and turn it right on his heads. And he can give the middle finger to us wimps and weaklings that we are, and say, hey, I told you I'm going to pull this off, and screw you guys. That would be the ultimate middle finger to us. But instead, oh, we don't need to know. They probably don't need to know because there's nothing to tell. I mean, does anybody see this any differently? Do you think that the UFC or Dana are trying to hold something close to the vest for any legitimate reason whatsoever? Let the silence be deafening. All right, so now, not to be outdone, I mean, we clearly have quite the epidemic going on in our hands here, but the sport of mixed martial arts continues to be what it is, and the fighters continue to be who they are. namely Jon Jones. So, unfortunately, the light heavyweight champion has yet again found himself on the wrong side of the law. He was arrested last week for a plethora of charges, including driving while under the influence, negligent use of a firearm. Also, he didn't have current insurance on the vehicle. Interesting. Probably the worst of all the offenses. So now we gotta wonder now. This Jon Jones news quite disturbing. And is it time for the UFC to strip him for a fourth time? Cole, I'll start with you.
Does it really matter? Because even if he gets stripped, his first fight's back for the belt. Like, and we've seen in the past him getting stripped has no impact on his. Like, it's not like, oh, I got stripped, I got my life together. He's been stripped before and done this stuff again. Like, him getting stripped or him not getting stripped, it has no bearing. Like, he needs to honestly, like, the judges in Albuquerque need to like lay their foot down, and be like send him to jail for a bit, like get him off. Like, I don't even know. It's just so just typical Jon Jones that, like, when I saw it, I had my laptop and my brother, first thing he says is that from today? Because he thought it was an old article. And I'm like, no, that was from today.
So does anyone else, because I'm sure in all of our private social circles, we're the MMA guy out of every group of friends we have, with the exception of fellow media members and any fighters that we might be acquainted with. Do you get those text messages or calls from casual fans or friends and families like, "What's up with Jon Jones?" Because I definitely got quite a few of them. At this point, what do we do about Jon, gentlemen? Cole makes a good point. Stripping him didn't seem to work the previous 3 times. Why would it work now? What should be done differently this time?
And, shout out to, I hesitate to call him friend of the show because he was an asshole, Juice Vargas. Because last time Juice was a guest on the show, we were talking about Jones. And I said maybe Jones has moved on to the next phase in his life. Maybe those, mad days of his, 20s are over. Maybe he's ready to take things seriously and we're going to see a whole new act to his career. And I said at that point that I am warily believing in Jon Jones. And as soon as this shit happened, not 5 minutes later, I got tweeted at by Juice. So the lesson I've learned is, how long does the gym have to be closed before Jon Jones does something stupid? What was it, about 10 days?
Like not even 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, it was about 10 days. So 10 days. Idle hands have never been the devil's workshop, more so than in the case of Jonathan Dwight Jones. And of course, stripping him isn't going to stop him because his impulse control is so poor that no potential consequence will be a deterrent to him. I mean, how many things has he done knowing that it was going to end with him having legal consequences and being stripped of his title? I don't have any answer. And, I'm really just tired of talking about the guy. It's just depressing and kind of tedious. And I can only imagine how more so it must be for the people that actually surround him on a daily basis in real life. His family, his coaches, his teammates, his friends. And because of that, I don't have too much more to say about it. I just, I guess the legal process needs to play itself out, whether he needs to be stripped or not. To an extent, it doesn't matter because the sport's being put on hold for a certain amount of time. I mean, if he was stripped, as Cole pointed out, he might be fighting for the belt again in his next fight anyway. Unless the UFC wants to invoke some sort of behavior clause. And I mean, they're not going to cut him.
No, of course not.
And they can't put him on the shelf indefinitely because he is owed a certain amount of fights. Like, not much is going to happen. It's a bummer.
Well, one thing I did want to bring up, Ben, off of your point there. You mentioned the people around him, his friends, his family, his coaches, his training partners. I'm thinking it's time to change that situation. It's time to change something around him.
Definitely.
Let's give a shout out to former guest of the show of MMA Junkie, Dave Doyle, who dropped a piece right after this that was suggesting that it might be time for Jones to change the circle around him. At what point do you have granted he has to want to make these changes for himself, but what sort of support system does he have? Is this a support system that supports his delinquent behavior? Is it that supporting it by either not saying anything and looking the other way, or by kind of facilitating this behavior? Um, should he be with a support system that's going to sit him down, look him in the eye, and tell him, "Hey, you're fucking up," and then knock it off? Um, you know what? As many jokes as we can tell about Jon Jones and his troubles, and granted there are plenty. I mean, this is MMA after all, and we live in the era of the meme. The memes are fantastic surrounding Jones and his troubles, but I'm getting the feeling that this is a man who's deeply depressed, that has a lot of serious, deep-seated issues that are not being fulfilled by money, fame, being the best in the world, and being the greatest fighter of all time. There's something missing there. There's something that he's not getting fulfilled in, and it's coming out in a very destructive way. And I think at this age, I mean, he's got this behavior of a 22-year-old still. I think it's time that major changes happen, and he sits down with a therapist for real. Jay, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I can pick up what you're putting down. Now, I don't want to cast any aspersions on teammates and management team and anybody like that, because I don't know the in and outs of the situation. But you have to imagine those organizations, the management team or whatever, would stick with him because there's a lucrative financial arrangement that can come of having Jon Jones under their umbrella, whether it's a 10% cut of purse and all those different kinds of things, because Jon Jones is a well-compensated fighter. So it would be up. I would just, he's 32 now. It's not, oh, he's just some young Thundercat doing his thing, and oh, he's getting into trouble because he's only 24 and he's a new champion. No, he's a grown-ass man now. And it's his second DUI. I mean, it's
No. He's got 3 kids.
Oh, yeah. He has a family. It's not just some reckless goofball that whatever, he's the best in the world. And he isn't behaving like that. And it's really unfortunate. It will almost behoove him and I don't want to say the sport, because that may seem a little too far reaching, but a lot of us, if the legal system does its job, doesn't treat him like a celebrity, plea him down to a misdemeanor and put him on 3 months of probation or something like that, and 25 hours of community service. If there's actually something to come of it, as Cole mentioned, if there's actual jail time to come of this. Now, yes, all 4 of these charges are misdemeanors, but some of them have jail times attached to them. Shooting off a firearm in the air at night has consequences. If I did that, I'd probably be put away for a little while. I'm an attorney, so I have a different set of conduct and reasonable knowledge and intelligence that a regular attorney wouldn't drive around with, whatever. But he's a professional fighter. He's a grown-ass man. He should know better than to get drunk and I mean, you don't even have to make allegedly now. That's the worst part about the situation. Like, it's on camera, him admitting he'd had a drink, and the evidence shown of the pistol under his car and the spent shell casing by his car door. Like, this isn't one of those, oh, maybe, I don't know, kind of situations, and that makes it worse. The UFC has the perfect opportunity in this post-victory UFC championship era, where you don't have to win a fight to get a title shot. It has the perfect chance to put 2 guys that have lost their last fight up for the next title, Thiago Santos and Dominic Reyes. I'm kind of joking, but that almost could be the landscape. But I have an important question that I want to ask you guys. I want to ask all three of you this question. And maybe it's a two-parter. You can answer it along the way. If this were any other champion, Kamaru Usman or Weili Zhang or something like that, if this were another champion, would they still have their title? And if this were another fighter, if this were a Jeremy Stevens type, just another fighter on the roster, would they even be on the roster anymore? Because I think some guys would be cut. Some guys have been cut for making bad jokes. So would if this weren't Jon Jones, would this be a different story?
I mean, there's certainly a time at the UFC where bad behavior would have gotten you in some sort of trouble and gotten you cut. I don't know if we're past that. If we're past that point because of the intensifying pressure about independent contractors and employees and trying to enforce some sort of code of conduct. But I do remember Miguel Torres being cut temporarily for a off-color joke on Twitter. I remember, I believe Forrest Griffin was fined for remarks about Fallon Fox.
Yep.
I do remember Junie Browning. I mean, he didn't even get to compete in the UFC after freaking out in a limo. Ala Aquinta was denied bonuses and stuff for a while for trashing a hotel room. So there is some sort of precedent set for bad behavior and punishment. But when you hear about some of the worst offenses and the people who get away with them, they tend to be the biggest moneymakers. They tend to be Conor McGregor throwing a dolly into a bus. By the way, this sets up the most lucrative pay-per-view in UFC history. So let's use the footage for the commercial. Let's go ahead and, just push Jon Jones through despite multiple PED issues, despite, fighting Daniel Cormier on stage at the press conference, despite crashing your Bentley, despite hit and run on a pregnant woman, despite now shooting a gun off in the desert at 2 a.m. or whatever it was. Here's something too that I want to stress, and I didn't really get what this part of it until it was mentioned very specifically in the SureDog internal Slack channel, where someone said, "You realize that all the bars in Albuquerque are closed. That means that Jones was drinking at his house, and then he got drunk and then decided to get in his car and drive around with a gun." That makes things even worse to me. You think about the people who have, so many people have driven drunk before, and, whether they would admit it or not, that's a very common thing. But the story typically goes, you're at a house party or you're at a bar and you have one too many, and then you get in your car to go home because you don't want to sleep in your car or whatever the case may be. How many people have left their house drunk to drive around aimlessly with a gun? And what part of that story sounds like anything remotely positive can come out of it?
He was across the street from a strip club. That was shown that there was a strip club. I do not believe it was open. I do not believe anything was open for business. But did he? I don't know. The question marks are all there.
Yeah, I mean, the address where he was arrested was right there on the paperwork. So enterprising Susie Kuzi on Twitter looked it up and gave us the Google Street View, and it's right across from a strip club that I assume Mr. Jones is familiar with, but so yeah, he left his house drunk. And I don't know if any or all of you have seen the footage, but we're not talking about like borderline tipsy, like hammered, distraught and upset, left his house with a loaded gun in his car and headed down to the whatever street it is in Albuquerque that the strip clubs are on. Yeah, like not the actions of a person who's feeling healthy.
And what really also, and this wasn't really raised, and one of my buddies actually, shout out to you, Jimbo, he raised that when Jones was in the video, in the arrest video, was talking about the issues he was dealing with. He said he had a lot of anxiety. Like when police were around him and he was getting cuffed, they were around him because you don't know, he's a 6'5" professional fighter. Who the heck knows? So they were around him, cuffing him and all that stuff. And he asked them, because of his anxiety, back away. He asks them multiple times in his inebriation to repeat or discuss the instructions because he has memory issues, because he gets punched in the head for a living. He mentions his attention deficit disorder. He mentioned that his daughter was dyslexic. So I don't know why that was raised. But anyway, he mentioned a myriad of issues that he was dealing with beyond the alcohol and whatever else may be going on. That was distressing for me too. I don't know if anybody else picked up on that, but when he's rattling off ADD and anxiety and short-term memory loss, like, he's 32. Other than a couple fights that you can picture in your head, he doesn't get hit that often relative to a Roy Nelson in the sport. So I don't know. It's kind of I don't know. It concerned me too.
Yeah, definitely. Cole, anything you want to add before we move along?
Even like, what was it, like a day or two before, he was on some Twitter rant basically just telling everyone to stay at home. And he was posting these like pictures like, stay at home, this is the first time you can help people by just kicking your feet up and watching TV. And then like 2 days later, you find out he was driving around just out and about.
That means Connor's going to do it, because Connor also posted about how he's stay inside.
Connor shelling out money for protective equipment for for hospitals and communities in need. He's looking real good right now. Not good. I mean, I'm not saying this cynically, like he's only doing it for the PR, but good PR move, good timing. And anything that an athlete does right now kind of stands out starkly from the background just because there's nothing else going on. It took a lot to get Ashley Evans Smith off the front page. I mean, this time last week, that story was just breaking to the point that Jay talked about it. Mm-hmm. And as details were still coming in.
Oh, man.
I figured we'd be talking about that shit for a month. Now it feels like it was 300 years ago. She's got to be the happiest person in MMA right now.
Yeah, probably wish she stole more stuff now, huh?
Speaking of which, there's no specific word from the UFC that she's lost her job or anything like that, is there?
No.
So talk about things that, like, ugly, bad look, misconduct that is just skating by.
Yeah. I mean, oh wow, I'm just not even sure what to make of all this. But I do know, as far as Jon Jones is concerned, I think the level of concern on the part of his employer should be ticked up a notch. And even if you're talking from a pure business standpoint, Jon Jones is one of the few stars in mixed martial arts and someone who has tried his best to stay active as of late. You kind of need his name to rotate every few months or so to score some pay-per-view points. So how about the UFC actually try to take care of him a little better this time? Maybe a stint in rehab lasting longer than a day would be a good start. Perhaps that would be a good start, and at the very least, protect your cash cow. Even if you don't care from a human standpoint.
Are rehab facilities open now?
It's a good point. I mean, would that be considered essential? It is medical treatment. So I don't know. I guess that would vary state by state.
They are medical facilities, real rehabs. Yeah. I mean,
there's real treatment being done.
Yeah, I would have to imagine.
Yeah, I mean, maybe when the dust clears from this, then maybe you move forward with something. But something needs to be done. Some sort of counseling, some sort of rehab. Whatever they tried before obviously didn't work. It's time to do something different and to do it with serious intent this time, and not just to say, oh, we did something. 24 hours just ain't going to cut it this time. All right, so let's move along here to the best title segment in all of media history, and that is I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we share something that surprised us the most from the news over the past week. Pre-fight, the fights themselves or anything that happened afterward, but were there fights? I don't know.
There
I
were
mean,
fights.
there were, yeah. I'll just jump and say I'm not surprised. Mr. Falcon's moment was Chael Sonnen actually successfully going through with submission grappling, submission underground. They elbow bumped and then started grappling. All right, just think about it. Cole, what's your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcon's moment this week?
I don't know if it's surprising, but it's like, it's just on my Twitter feed today. There was a lot of it. There were people blaming Khabib, saying, "Why did Khabib go back to Russia? He should have stayed in the States."
Oh,
Do people not realize he has kids, he has a wife, he has a family? During this time where Russia's closing border, he might not be able to see him for what could be 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 months, like no one knows. And you're gonna say, "Oh, stay in the States and not see your family for a year because you have a fight." Like, I shouldn't really be surprised those people, but it's like, I can't believe people are actually making those takes.
I'd say there's some stupid ass people in the world. Good Lord.
Yeah, he has Ramadan coming up.
Yep.
Like a month of what for him is strict and not fun, like kind of onerous religious observance. But dude, just do it at AKA, or like stay at the UFC PI and like fast for a month. Like, fuck all the way off, people. Come on.
Yeah, he's ducking them, bro. He didn't really want it. Jesus.
I saw that too. I did. I'm with you on that, Cole. I did. On the Sherdog forums, I saw a litany of posters. Quack, quack. It's like, do you, what? Really? That's where you're going with?
Yeah, with the combined IQ of a raisin, all of them. Bunch of morons. Ben, can you please share your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcon's moment this week?
Yeah, did I see on the program that we're kind of melding this and Buried Treasure together?
Yes.
Okay, because this is a fairly new story, but yesterday the National Collegiate Athletic Association, the NCAA, made their decision on what they're going to do about sports. And spring sports are off, but spring athletes will get deferred eligibility. If they want another season of eligibility, they've got it. Winter athletes will not get additional eligibility. That means the big mainstream news, of course, is basketball. But for us talking here, that means there's an entire crop of wrestlers that are not going to get another year of eligibility in compensation for this. On the one hand, that's terrible. Like, not every wrestler turns to MMA. For, I would say, the majority of those people, that wrestling is their dream. They wanted to be in the tournament, which of course is already canceled. They want to win that championship. Maybe they're going to use that as their track to the Olympics. So that's a lot of hopes and dreams down the drain for no good reason that I can see. But yes, indirectly, a year, 2 years, 5 years from now, MMA might benefit from this, as just a few of those wrestlers decide to try their hand at the Ultimate Fighting thing, since they're not going to be able to wrestle next year anyway.
All right, so let's lay and pray it benefits our sport. Jay, can you share with us your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcon's moment this week?
I had a whole segment prepared to talk about Eddie Alvarez and how he showed up and spoke with TJ DeSantis on Beatdown, where he was defending Dana White and saying that we don't understand and we don't get it. And there was a whole spiel. But, I guess why would Eddie be defending Dana, the ex-employee or ex-contractor? I get it, but whatever. That's a beautiful mess of horrible. It's called Fame MMA. It takes place in Poland. And, okay, some European MMA, like, for instance, other fellow Polish promotion, KSW, has legitimate fights and legitimate ex-UFC talent and great fighters, and Karolina Kowalkiewicz won over there frequently. Jan Blachowicz won over there frequently. So legitimate talent. And then they have some other fights that are a little fun. It's not quite to the level of Pride matchmaking of mega sumos, but it's Instagram bodybuilders, and Mariusz Pudzianowski, world's strongest man, has like 15 or 20 fights in the organization. So they kind of have fun. Well, Fame MMA is all about the goofball fights, the messes, the celebrity slot fights, the actor fights a pro 1-on-1 fighter, and Instagram models and everything like that. So Fame MMA held an event on Saturday. Now, no fighter that I'm aware of had more than 2 wins to their credit. So this wasn't a high level event, I'll tell you that much. Like the best fighter on the card was 2-0. Okay. Okay. All right. We'll work with me here. The event was going to take place in Katowice, Poland, and to adhere to Polish policies of sporting events, it was in an undisclosed location. It was in some warehouse, some hidden place that nobody could find it, a secret event. Before the event happened on Saturday, the promoters, which still hadn't publicly said where the event was going to take place, the promoters were raided in their hotel by the police to say, we are shutting this down. We are not going to let this happen, and raided them. Despite that, the event went on. The event actually happened. Don't know how. Don't know if the Polish Dana was in handcuffs or whatever was going on while the fights. I have no clue. We know very little about the event, and I just didn't have it in me to spring for the pay-per-view. The winner of the main event, I know this is long, but you got to see it to believe it, was a woman who was made famous on a music video doing suggestive butter churning. She is the Polish music video equivalent of Emily Ratajkowski from that, was it Robin Thicke
Blurred
video,
Lines.
or the dancing girl. She was the Polish equivalent of that she made her name doing a suggestive music video. She was in the main event, and she did not do well. I'm shocked, I guess, but she did not fare well in her plastic surgery and her everything going on. That was the main event. So it was just, if it can be a smashing success and an unmitigated disaster at the same time, put it together. You got Fame MMA in an undisclosed warehouse in Katowice, Poland.
Is that worth getting raided by the feds?
Wow. Don't. It's
wow.
So you thought Dana was intense about fights?
Yeah, good Lord. All right. This sport is so damn weird. All right, so let's move on to the speed bag as we near the end of the program here. So you guys are going to have 10 seconds to answer these 3 questions. We're going to start with our special guest, Cole. So Singapore closed its borders and canceled its sporting events. Is one championship out of commission at least until May?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the sentiment around all sports. See, NHL, MLB, NBA, they're all saying kind of June, July's best case scenario. I think that's kind of MMA's result as well.
All right. Ben, is this the end of one championship until at least May?
Yes, because Singapore also put a moratorium on all gatherings of more than 1 trillion people.
Oh, man, they are just stuck.
All right, Jay. Is one championship out of business until at least May?
Yeah, that whole one championship in a TV studio, that was a pipe dream. When I said in the Cage Warriors play-by-play, this is the last card for a while, I meant it.
All right. Okay, so start with you on this one, Ben. Joe Rogan says he will not call UFC 249 if it happens in the U.S. So who should be on the call instead?
Get the band back together. I bet Mike Goldberg is looking for something to do that weekend.
Your time is all over. All right. Jay, can you tell us who do you think should replace Rogan if UFC 249 happens in the U.S.?
I wish I still had my napkin prop with a big 0 on it, because that's what I put up. The event's not going to happen. But who can do it? There aren't many people that can do it. Nobody. All right. Phil Baroni. Phil Baroni can do it.
That just sounds gloriously bad. All right, Cole, who do you think should replace Joe Rogan if UFC 249 happens in the U.S.?
We saw Chael Sonnen commentate Submission Underground for some undisclosed warehouse. He can do it for 249.
All right.
Was it a grain silo?
Yeah,
aggressive.
wherever.
I thought that, I don't know if that was just a joke or that was something that people were saying, because I saw that or read that more than once on the internet. I don't know. I
All
really
right,
don't.
Jay, I'm gonna start with you on this one. Dana White said that boxing is "quote unquote" a mess. He doesn't think it can be fixed. Do you think this spells the end for Zuffa boxing?
Zuffa boxing never started. Dana realized he can't pay boxers 15% of the revenue and get away with it like he does in the UFC. So no, there's no Zuffa boxing.
All right, Cole, is Zuffa boxing dead in the water?
Zuffa box is never a thing. They printed out. I could print out T-shirts saying Shelton boxing. I'm launching, and just never launch and say,
Sign
"We're
me
gonna
up. I'll
stop."
buy one.
I want my Shelton boxing T-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ben.
I'll wear one on the show.
Oh, definitely. I would so wear that. All right, Ben. Does Zuffa boxing have a chance now that Dana White says that boxing can't be fixed?
Co-sign with Jay. What he means by mess is that fighters want 50 to 70% of the revenue, and he can't change that.
All right. So, of course, now it is my turn. I'm going to give myself 30 seconds to answer all three questions. The 30 seconds will start after I read the first question. So, Singapore closed its borders and canceled its sporting events as one championship out of commission until May at least. The good news is that all the free tickets that they throw on the streets can be used as PPE. Now, Rogan being out of UFC 249, I just want to see Dominic Cruz by himself just being antagonistic to everybody for absolutely no reason. Be fantastic. And of course, Zuffa boxing is dead in the water. Dana White can't pay peanuts, therefore it doesn't happen. And wow, I guess none of these boxers actually really want to be a fucking fighter. And there we go. There's the bell. Okay, so let's move on here. We got one last question to wrap this up quickly, gentlemen. Cole, I'll start with you. When the UFC does eventually return to its normal schedule, after, of course, the apocalypse has decided to come to a screeching halt, is it going to front load its return with a bunch of stacked cards?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, say it doesn't come back until August, September, is anyone really going to be shocked if the first event is Khabib Conor 2? Like, that's the way the UFC makes the most amount of money, and Ferguson just kind of gets screwed again. Like, that's honestly what if this goes a couple months, Dana White's going to say, we got to make the most amount of money as quick as possible. The fast way to do it is McGregor Khabib 2. And then after that, they'll just put double title fights, triple title fights, and just try to make as much money back as they possibly can at the end of the year.
Yeah, I can kind of see that too. The only thing that I think would throw a monkey wrench into that is a potential for McGregor Pacquiao, which is something that makes my skin crawl, but is a very distinct possibility with Pacquiao moving to Conor's management company, and also the definite money crisis that Endeavor would be in once all this is over with. So fellas, I mean, say we do get those stat cards that Cole's talking about here. Who do you think headlines were like? What's the craziest main card you think we're going to see?
I would envision, I mean, a couple of huge cards coming down the pike almost immediately. Like, I imagine as soon as it's safe, they will have a Weili Zhang headed card, in China. That will probably be the least loaded of the big cards in terms of athletes of like global appeal, because they can use a lot of their Chinese fighters on it. I imagine we'll see a couple of huge ones in Vegas. I mean, assuming Jon Jones is a free man, they're going to get him back in as quickly as possible. Again, I don't think he's going to be stripped. I think he's going to be, defending his title pretty quickly. Obviously, either Khabib Tony or Khabib Conor. To me, the weird thing is going to be this hard reset is going to put all the fighters it's going to mess up their usual rhythm and their usual flow. Like, if you read or have ever written a matches to make column, you get into this rhythm where you realize that some of the same fighters show up on the same cards or like weekend adjacent cards just because, all things being equal, they're ready to fight about every 3 months. Well, this is going to do a hard reset on all of that. So they can't front load too much, or 6 or 8 weeks down the road, they're going to be hard up for something to put, on pay-per-view. Like the natural rhythm of having their bigger stars kind of available on a rolling basis is going to suffer. So that's mostly what I'm interested to see. Like, obviously there's going to be fireworks the first 3 or 4 weeks they're back. What will happen the next 3 or 4 weeks? And how are they going to spread it out?
I have to say my main prediction. I'm sure we're going to see Khabib versus Tony. Like, we're going to get that fight unless nuclear disaster then stops it. And it's just very clear that the universe doesn't want it to happen. Whole other story. But I think we see Khabib versus Tony. I'd imagine that some of the other main events and some of the marquee main card fights that we're missing out on will be lumped onto a single card. Like I can see Ngannou versus Rosenstruck going down as a main card fight for like a Khabib Tony pay-per-view. I would envision Tyron Woodley versus Colby Covington. I think Leon Edwards gets screwed once again, and of course it's cited on record. Dana will go on a podium and say that Leon Edwards turned down the fight originally, and he didn't really want it. I can envision that happening, but though that's kind of my main predictions on this. Jay, any fights you think might be happening, or any matchups in particular you'd like to see?
Yeah, it was something that I've been kind of chewing on for a couple of days of like the potential. What is the UFC going to do when it finally starts going again? And I think it was Dan Shapiro of The Athletic and several other organizations made a mock card that I agreed very strongly with. That the 249 or whatever number they're going to call it, the first big pay-per-view back, will be composed of a composite of UFC Columbus and UFC Portland at 249, where Khabib Tony and Ngannou Rosenstrike and Overeem Harris and Woodley and Covington, because Leon Edwards is going to be forced to fight somebody on the prelims now. You can tell it's going to happen. And it's going to be a big blockbuster card, and we're going to go, "Ooh, wow, they're pulling out all the stops." But we know the UFC. We have yelled about the UFC for some 40-something weeks now on this show in whatever incarnation it's been in, and we know that the UFC as an entity is very short-sighted. So we will get the blowout cards. We will get the front-loaded big things, and we may get a UFC Sao Paulo card that is pay-per-view caliber. But then August rolls, or say we get back in the game and by June, we'll say we start rolling in June. So June, big kaboom cards, and then July International Fight Week, boom again, and then August rolls around, and we're stuck with an Islam Makhachev headline fight night card, which, okay, fine, respectable fighter, but it's going to be just a talent drop-off that we're going to go, oh, crap, we blew through all of our names. Like, the UFC very well could put multiple money fights on a single card to maximize that. You can picture Diaz getting thrown a big Scrooge McDuck bag of money to come on and fight, I don't know, Justin Gaethje. Let's get weird. But that kind of money draws, yeah, you can see it though. Just to jam pack the fight cards. And then September we go, ooh, wait a second, we probably messed that up. They're going to go big right out of the gate, and then we're going to have to ask questions.
All right, so I think that should do it right now for this edition of Unleash. Definitely want to thank Cole for coming back on the program. Thank you for not betraying me in some way, shape, or form this whole hour long. I know that took a lot of self-control. So Cole, where can we find some upcoming projects? I know you're getting creative with the quarantine. So what do you have coming out that we can look forward to?
Yeah, so starting BJPen 2 days ago. I've been doing every division. I talked to 8 to 10 fighters every division about who their divisional GOAT is and why. So I flyweight, bantamweight, featherweight out every single day to follow me, every single one. Just trying different stuff. Like a week ago, I got a sunset out, a breakdown round by round of his fight against Masvidal in 2005, which
that's awesome.
Not a lot of people. He actually remembered it pretty well, and I searched for probably close to an hour on YouTube to try to find that thing, and there is no footage. So, but it's just like, it's kind of hard right now to get content. So I'm just trying to figure some unique things to do and just different things to do that will get some eyes on it. But yeah, that's for the big project I'm working on right now.
All right, sounds good. Definitely looking forward to checking that out. So, Cole, once again, thank you for jumping on the program. You can find Cole on Twitter at Judas the Betrayer. I mean, Cole Shelton 91. So go ahead, give my man a follow. Check out his work, fine work he does for both BJPen.com and My MMA News. So Ben Duffy, you know him, the jack of all trades, master of them all. Ben, what's up?
Is that 91 the year of your birth?
No.
Okay.
No, he's born in like 2003 or something, man.
No.
All right. So Ben, you can find him on Twitter at Benjamin Duffy. Excellent work he does for SureDog.com. Definitely a lot of creative things coming up from Ben as always. And Jay, the statistician, he's got, of course, more fine work on SureDog.com. You can find him on Twitter at JPetri. Of course, if you can't remember all that, the names are right below us. So go ahead and just read. I'm sure you can read if you're watching this program. And of course, I'm Ant Walker. Follow me on Twitter at Ant Walker MMA. I guess I'm back with SureDog for the time being. Also back with MMA on Point for the time being. So hey, there's that. So man, they're desperate for content. Big Daddy's back, baby. Let's get this work. And of course, my column with Kristen King on My MMA News live now about MMA continuing to be weird at a weird time. So you know what you got to do. You got to like, subscribe. You got to share. You got to tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. And in the meantime, while you're quarantined, you must stay beautiful. You must stay positive. You must stay isolated. And through it all, you got to stay sexy. I will see you when I see you. Peace.